Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I have another interesting tutorial for you today. So last week someone wrote in the comment that they would like to know how I would set up a sort of virtual environment where you could have a 3D presentation using real 3D objects. So previously I made a tutorial on how I would set up a sort of fake 3D presentation that was using flat images that was keyed out. So just giving the illusion that it was a 3D presentation. But this time I am going to be using real 3D objects. All right, so I'm going to be showing you guys what we will be setting up today. So I've prepared this environment, and this is for a pretend online event about statues, right? Because who does not love statues? And here we have our favorite talent, Nora, who is currently explaining to us about a certain statue, but we don't see anything right now. That's because I haven't triggered it to be visible yet. So let's press my trigger here that I've prepared, and boom, now we can see a statue of Aphrodite. So Nora is explaining about the statue, where it comes from and whatnot. And, we want to see the whole detail of the statue. So I've prepared another trigger here to rotate the statue around so we can see all the details from the sides and from the back and all that. And of course, if it's a presentation, it's not only going to be about one model. And here on my dashboard, as you can see, it says statue number. And I can actually update this to number 2, for example. And now we have another statue. And this is a statue of Einstein. So Nora is explaining about Einstein and all that. And when she's done, just like a slide, next presentation, I'm going to set number 3. And boom, now we have another statue. And moving on the presentation, number 4. And now we have Napoleon and have one more statue ready. And if I want to stop the rotation, I just press the trigger again. And if I want to make the presentation, the statue on the presentation invisible again, I just have to press the trigger again and it will disappear. So if you're interested to know how I set this up, let's get to it. And here we are in the Unreal Editor for Aximmetry. So I have my scene, my level open. And here in my content browser, I have a folder called statues, and I have all my static meshes, all my 3D assets that I will be needing for my project. So as you can see, I have 3 statues that are standing up, and I'm using them as decoration around my set. And here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 statues, which I will be using for the actual presentation. Now, if you're wondering where on earth did I find these amazing pieces of art, I got these models from a website called 3dscans.com, and you can download all these models for free, and they're really high quality. And because they're really high quality, you might want to bring them into Blender and reduce the poly counts first before bringing them in to Unreal Engine. All right, so I have my models ready. So now we can get started with constructing the blueprint. So the first thing that I need to do is to make a list. And that list will include all the models, the static meshes that I want inside the presentation. And that would be called a data table here in Unreal Engine. So for me to create a data table, I need to first make a structure or a struct. So right click and blueprint and structure. And I'm going to name it strct for struct and underscore statues. And what a structure is going to let me do is, let's double click it. It is going to let me choose what kind of variables will be included. So for example, we are going to need a static mesh object reference, right? So we want in our data table for each row to be holding a static mesh, but not just a static mesh, right? We want to, let's say, add another variable for maybe the name of the statue. So maybe here I can have a string I prefer string rather than name because it can contain more information. So I'm going to name this variable name. So it's a statue name, whether it's maybe it's like Napoleon or maybe it's Aphrodite and whatnot. And for the static mesh, I'm just going to call it static mesh. And for now, I think these are the only two variables that I will actually be needing. So that's done. Let's save this. So now that I have my structure, I can create my data table. So right click and go to miscellaneous, I believe. Yes. And here there is an option for data table. And as soon as you click it, it's going to ask for a structure. And since we already made the structure, it will appear in the drop down right here, struct statues. So which is why you need to create your structure first and then hit OK. And I'm going to call this DT for data table underscore statues. Right, and let's double click it and open it up. And so now we have our data table opened, and as you can see, it is still empty because we do not have any entries yet. So I have 6 meshes that 6 3D models that I want to include inside my presentation. So I'm gonna add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 entries, and I'm going to select the first one. And as you can see, as we have set up in our structure, we have a slot here to put in a name and a slot to select a static mesh. So I'm going to select my first mesh. I'm going to type in head. And the first one is Aphrodite. And I can write her name here, Aphrodite. And the reason I'm including the name here, who knows, you might later on in your presentation decide that you don't want just a 3D model to appear, but maybe you want a 3D text of the name next to it or underneath it. Okay, so for the row name here, I'm just gonna type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the row name, or should I say the row number here, is what I'm going to be using in Aximmetry to select which model I want to be shown. So just make sure that has numbers in it. And now I am going to fill up the rest of the entries. And I am done with all my entries. So now if I select 1, Aphrodite will show up, 2, Einstein will show up, 4, Napoleon will show up, and so on. So I'm just going to save this. So now that we have our data table, the only thing left to do is to create the actual blueprint. So I'm going to right click, blueprint class, and actor, and I'm going to name it BP underscore, and you guessed it, statues, right? And let's open up our blueprint. And so the first thing that I'm going to need in my blueprint is a static mesh, right? Because without a static mesh, our 3D models will not be able to appear. So this is a static mesh, but it is a empty static mesh. Well, currently it's empty because we are going to set up in the event graph a way to populate it, from the data table. So currently it is empty. And the next thing I'm going to need is a rotating movement. There you go, so that our 3D model can rotate. So these are the only 2 components that I need. And now let's dive into the event graph. And I'm going to start by deleting the event, actor, begin overlap, yada yada. Not gonna need it. And now I'm going to set up the part where we're going to have a trigger that's going to toggle the visibility of the model. So if you want to turn it on and off. So I'm going to drag the static mesh here, and because we need a reference to it from it, and I'm going to right click and get Aximmetry trigger, and I'm going to name it statues IO. I like to use IO when I want things turned on and off. And bind event to trigger. There you go. Event begin play, bind event to trigger, and it's going to be a custom event. And I'm going to drag out of the static mesh here, and I'm going to type in visibility, set visibility set visibility. And by default, I'm going to have the static mesh on the visibility here. It's going to be on, right? So visible, yes, on. So by default, it's going to be on. So when I press it for the first time, I'm going to turn it off. See here, it is off. Go ahead and just copy and paste this underneath it. And this time, if I press it a second time, it is going to be visible again. So just drag that there, and I'm going to need a flip-flop. There you go. So if I press it the first time, it's going to turn it off. If I press it again, it's going to turn it on. And of course, if you want to set it the other way around, go ahead. But I recommend that whichever, if you want it on the first click, so make sure by default it is off. If you want it off on the first click, then make sure by default it is on. Otherwise, it's going to be off and you're going to press it once and nothing's going to happen. Okay, so that's set up, and I can just like drag this over here just to keep things tidy. And I can type C, and I'm going to make a comment here and turn on or off. Okay. Ta-da. And then next, I need to set up the part where we will be able to choose which model is going to be shown. So this is going to be from Eventic because we want this to update in real time. So first, I'm going to need a get data table row, and then it's going to ask me to specify which data table. And we only have one because we only made one. And as you can see here, there is a row name and it's a drop down, and there are 6 options because we have 6 entries that we made in our data table. So now we have to, set up a way for us to be able to select which number later on in Aximmetry. So to do that, we're going to right click and get Aximmetry integer. I'm going to use integer for this. And I'm going to name it statue number. All right, so a little problem here. The value here is an integer, and an integer is like a number, and the value here, it is a row name. So we need to convert this. No worries, if I pull it directly, it's not compatible, but we need to convert this to a string. So convert string, or actually just type in string, and here to string integer, and then from here it can convert to a name. As easy as that. Okay, so now that's set up. So now in Aximmetry you can choose a number from 1 to 6, preferably. You can choose any number, but there's only 6 options. And once it sets that number, so row found, what is it going to do? It's going to set the model for the static mesh. So I'm going to get a reference from our static mesh once again, and then we're gonna set static mesh. Here we go. And so if the row is found, set static mesh. If no row is found, well, don't do anything. And that's not gonna work because I have to, on the out row, I have to right click, and I need to split the struct pin first. And now I have out row static mesh, and that is what I'm going to connect. And we're done, actually. So I'm gonna put some notes here, and set statue number. Okay, so now the last step that I want is to control the rotation to make it be able to stop or rotate. So to do that, actually I'm going to set a sequence here. There you go. All right, for the rotating movement, you're going to want to set the rotation rate to something like maybe like 20, because 180 is really fast. And down here, if you scroll down, it says auto active, and I don't want that to be true. So I'm going to turn it off because I don't want it to be rotating by default. So now I can right click and I can type in activate, and here it says activate rotating movement. So we're going to need another trigger. So get Aximmetry trigger, and this time we're going to call it rotate IO, so on off, and this is repetitive, but by an event trigger, and custom event. I could copy paste from the top bar, but whatever. So flip flop, and when you press it the first time, it's going to activate because by default it is off. And if I press it a second time, it's going to deactivate rotating movement. Or I could just get the reference from the same node here, and there you go. So press it once, it will turn on. Press it again, and it will be deactivated. All right, so that's done. I can comment that and rotate on off. So there we go. Those are the 3 parameters that we will be able to do. Turn it on and off, rotate it, turn on the rotation on and off, and set which model is going to be used. And this is actually done. The blueprint is done. You can compile, save. So now the only thing left to do is to add your blueprint, in your level. But it's kind of hard to visualize where it is because, there aren't any meshes loaded. And what you could do is to actually select here static mesh and load one of the models. Preferably, I would load the first one, which is Aphrodite. So now you can see it, and you can also see that it's kind of big. So I might scale down to 0. Maybe like 85. And let's compile. And that's not looking so bad. And you might want to also, here in the event graph, here in the default value for the set statue number, you might want to just set that to 1. So it'll start with the first model, just in case. Save it. So now that you're good to go, all you have to do is, cook content for Aximmetry D. And here we are back in Aximmetry, and we have our project loaded, and we can see our 3 pins here in the bottle. Statues in out, okay, and rotate, okay, and the statue number. Okay, so let's test it out. So in out, so there you go, invisible, visible, rotate, stop rotate, and let's change the statue number, and it works. Everything works perfectly. But let's not stop there. Let's add the name of the statue. So the first thing you're gonna need to do is go to your plugins and activate 3D text, because of course our model is 3D. We also want the text to be in 3D. So now I have to restart my editor. Let's close that and open up our BP statue again. All right, so now we're going to need to add a 3D text. There you go, 3D text. And we need to place this 3D text somewhere. So maybe we want it to be on the right side, sort of next to it. There you go. I think my Aphrodite model is the biggest one, so if it's not overlapping with this one, it should be fine for the rest. Okay, so now we go back to our event graph, and we're going to drag our 3D text, bring it in here, and set text. There you go. And so we're gonna drag an execution pin here. So after it gets the static mesh, it's going to set the text. After it sets the static mesh, it's going to set the text, and we're going to get the value from the out row. There you go. It's going to do a little conversion, and that should do it. Let's test it out. Cook content for Aximmetry, and there you go. Now you have the name of the statue right next to it. And I probably should have chosen a different color, so that you could read it better, but I just want to change the number here just to prove that the name will change with the statue. Now, I know there's going to be a little problem here. If I click the trigger for rotation, the name is going to rotate with the statue. Don't panic, there is an easy fix for this. So back in the blueprint again, and I just need to add another pin here to my sequence, and I'm going to set update component for rotating movement. And I'm going to bring this up here to the side a little bit. Actually, this is not supposed to be in there. There you go. And it's going to ask me, so which component, right? Which component do you want to be affected by the rotating movement? So that would be the static mesh only, right? And now it's only going to affect the static mesh. And while I am here, I might as well, select my 3D text and change the material to another color. So I already prepared the material here. And that should make it more visible. And just one more last thing, there is an issue of your turn on and off visibility. Right now, it's only affecting the static mesh. So it's only going to turn on and off the 3D model and not the text. So you're going to end up with, if you turn off the model, you will still see the text. And you don't want that. You want everything to disappear at the same time. And all you need to do is just drag here a reference to your text and, like bring it in the target as well. So now it will turn on and off, see the visibility with the static mesh. Now you're done, you're absolutely done. So compile, save, and cook your content. And so here is our final product, and everything should work now. If I turn it off, see both the text and the model is turning off or on. And if I press the rotate, it is only going to rotate the model and not the text. And let's try changing it. Change model, Aphrodite, Goth. I hope I'm saying that right. Goth. And we have Napoleon, Bonaparte, Tennyson, and the last one, Wesley. And that is all there is to it. That is how you set up a 3D presentation in Unreal Engine for your virtual event using Aximmetry. If you guys would like to request any other tutorials, by all means, write it in the comments. And if I do possess the experience and the know-how on such topic, I will try my best and make a video for you. And also, based on today's tutorial, I will be uploading a blueprint with everything already set up, and you can just like replace the placeholder static meshes with your own 3D models. And by the way, speaking of Patreon, I would like to thank my patrons. Thank you so much for supporting me and the channel. I am super grateful. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys on the next video. Bye.